As you can see, it's a blustery autumn day outside my front window, and it brought to mind a poem that Mathew wrote. It is in the Boston Weekly Museum, the November 23, 1850 edition. It's called The Winds, A Day in Autumn. Now, this is signed Smike, and that's not one of Mathew's usual pseudonyms. That's a one-off. He used hundreds of them. So I got onto the website for the Christian Science Monitor, and this is something written by Marjorie Kehe, I guess it's pronounced Kehe, the Monitor Books editor for the Christian Science Monitor. And she says, Smike is one of a series of poorly treated innocents who haunt Dickens' fictive universe. Smike first appears in Dickens' third novel, Nicholas Nickleby, as a cruelly abused and severely disabled child who is unlucky enough to have been left at a, quote, school run by the villainous Rackford Squeers. Smike is rescued by the novel's title character and becomes fiercely loyal to him. Only when Smike has died does Nicholas discover that Smike was his own cousin, the son of his scheming uncle, Ralph Nickleby. And then I made a note under here that Nicholas Nickleby was Dickens' third novel, published in serial form from 1838 to 1839. And this poem is now 1850. We know that Mathew Franklin Whittier was a fan of Charles Dickens, but he was a little bit skeptical, I think, of Dickens' motives in accepting his and Abby's manuscript of A Christmas Carol and reworking it and dumbing it down spiritually the way he did. But he continued to believe in Dickens and his character as it was publicly projected. I think he got more and more skeptical as time went on. Now, this poem, The Winds, A Day in Autumn, is actually an allegory for plagiarists. The winds represent the plagiarists that have been plaguing Mathew for years. Now, this is written at a time when Poe had died fairly recently, but Francis Durivage and his partner, George Burnham, had published a huge swath of Mathew's portfolio, which they tricked him out of. They tricked him out of the rights to that portfolio in probably early 1848, and they published essentially they published the whole blasted thing, as near as I can tell, over the next few years. So he was furious at them, and he was furious at Poe, and I think he wasn't so sure about Dickens. So there's references in here. There's a reference to Dickens, lowercase, which is something that went way back to Shakespeare's time, but it may be a reference to Charles Dickens. And then at the end, you will see that the sound of this last stanza is very reminiscent of Poe's The Bells. So I'm guessing that was a secret reference to Edgar Allan Poe, who stole The Raven and Annabel Lee from him. But there's a clue in here. I'm not just guessing this. When we get to the line, at the rustling and bustling they have made a turning leaves. Now that's italicized. Mathew often italicized words or phrases that had a double meaning or which were puns. And turning leaves means looking through old manuscripts, old newspapers for unsigned material that you can plagiarize. So it's a euphemism for plagiarizing, see? So this is not my imagination, but it's an excellent poem. It's written very much in the same meter as The Raven, and I didn't get it. I'm going to go get my copy of The Raven. I've got two, actually. I'll get one of them. This is the one I have. That's the entire volume, the first 6 months of American Review. And I will put up on the screen. The second stanza starts out, "Ah, distinctly I remember it was in the bleak December, and each separate dying ember wrought its ghost upon the floor." And we will see, in the winds, a day in autumn. It is autumn, chilly autumn, and the winds are on the wing. They're a whisking and a frisking and a foul of everything. It's not that Mathew was imitating the style of The Raven. It's that that was his preferred style, his preferred meter, which he, did variations on. So you can't absolutely compare it in a lockstep style, but basically that was Matthew's style. And he wrote it here in that style because that was the style he liked. It fit with his personality. And The Raven, and also Lady Geraldine's Courtship, which was plagiarized by Elizabeth Barrett, the future Elizabeth Barrett Browning. Those two poems have been compared. The reason is they were both written by Mathew Franklin Whittier, who in 1842 was unwisely sharing unpublished poetry with various literati, both in America and abroad. And some of them stole it and claimed it as their own. So now, with my little sermon out of the way, I'm just going to share this poem with you. I think it's incredibly good. And I did due diligence. I got online, I get on Google, and I put in some of the lines, and I could find no reference to it whatsoever. Nobody has claimed this. Nobody seems to have reproduced it anywhere, unlike a lot of Matthew's other work, which was reproduced and claimed by various people, and historians claimed for various people. You know, Mathew wrote anonymously for 50 years, and some of it was excellent work, and there was a feeding frenzy. You know what it makes me think of? I think I've mentioned this before in this blog. It was a horribly embarrassing incident. I lived in a 2-story duplex, and you know, I like to go to garage sales, and occasionally if people were throwing stuff out, I wasn't above actually scrounging stuff. Well, I came home and there was stuff all over the yard. It looked like a yard sale, you know. I assumed it was a yard sale, or else somebody was throwing stuff out, or I didn't know what it was. So I started going through and looking for things that I might be able to use. This was my backyard, you know, but it came from upstairs. And somebody else walking by saw it and started looking through too. And then the guy shows up and he says, "Oh, that's my stuff. I'm moving in upstairs." That's the upstairs lady's boyfriend that was moving in. And it was horrifically embarrassing. But that is what happened to Mathew's anonymous published work, is there was a feeding frenzy. People just started snapping it up, and it made a lot of people famous. That's the real interpretation of what's going on here. Not that I'm a crazy megalomaniac trying to claim past life work that wasn't mine, see? It's a paradigm shift. You have to go through a complete paradigm shift and look at it that way, as opposed to the way that people automatically assume it must be. All right, so with my second sermon out of the way, I'm going to read this poem, which I think quality-wise is on a par with The Raven, personally, especially when you understand what it is. It is autumn, chilly autumn, and the winds are on the wing. They're a whisking and a frisking and a foul of everything. With a whistle they salute me, and my nose they coolly grasp. Oh, they bite me like a serpent, and they sting me like a wasp. And they shrug their wicked shoulders, and they chuckle in their sleeves at the new display of colors my poor nasal point receives. They have teased old Father Boreas till he's given them a spree, and they play the very dickens with everything they see. They set the leaves a-flying o'er the grass-forsaken ground, like a sinful congregation when the hat is passing round. And the saucy little rascals keep a-laughing in their sleeves at the rustling and the bustling they have made a-turning leaves. Our old weathercock, poor fellow, he has had a sorry day. He would gladly turn and face them, but he could not tell which way. They've whirled him and they've twirled him till they've forced him from his roost, and, grown giddy with excitement, he has given up the ghost. And the wicked little wretches still are laughing in their sleeves at his melancholy corpus lying stark beneath the eaves. And the rickety old building that stood nodding to the skies, all in vain its solemn moanings, all in vain its stifled sighs, with a crashing and a smashing that goes booming through the town, it is openly assaulted and is rudely tumbled down. And the devil-daring villains still keep laughing in their sleeve. Such a web of sad disasters ne'er an Argive loom could weave. But the worst of all their doings, with a shudder I repeat, they have whisked my nose so often you'd mistake it for a beat. And my teeth they chatter with a hollow, deathly sound, like a watchman's rolling rattle as he walks his gloomy round. Oh, the wicked little rascals, they may chuckle in their sleeves, but all honest folks despise them as they would a band of thieves. Smike.